Thank you for joining today for our webinar, Self-Host an Open Source Slack Alternative Using Mattermost. Today, I will be your speaker, Mavian Ruiz, Bitnami's Partner Marketing Manager, and we have Tien, our Chief Executive Officer from Mattermost. So just as a high-level agenda as to what we're going to be covering today, I will be telling you about the Bitnami applications and how you can launch Bitnami Mattermost on Azure. And then Ian will take it from there, giving you guys a live demo as to how to launch Bitnami Mattermost from our Launchpad, a few benefits and features of Mattermost, how to import a Slack team, Mattermost use cases, and then he'll go into an in-depth demo as to how to use Mattermost. And then if you have any other questions, feel free to use the chat client, and we will get to those at the end. So for those of you that do not know about Bitnami or may need a refresher, we package over 150 applications with many different categories, including infrastructure, DevOps, and line of business apps. However, the true benefit of using a Bitnami application is that we have a long knowledge and expertise in packaging software. We provide up-to-date, secure and trusted, out-of-the-box solutions that you can find all from one place. And for those of you that may not know, Bitnami partners with all major cloud service providers, so you can also launch Mattermost on AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Oracle, to name a few. So where can you launch Bitnami Mattermost? We have our Bitnami Launchpads. You can search for Mattermost straight from the Azure Marketplace, and for those that work in any highly regulated industries, you can use the Azure Government Cloud as well. If you're not fully familiar with the Azure Government Cloud, you can know that it has world-class compliance and security. So if you work in healthcare, it's HIPAA compliant. If you work in banking, it's PCI compliant. For government partners that have exclusive access to this, it has specific use cases for your industry as well. Bitnami had published our first wave of applications in the Azure Government Cloud Marketplace as of November last year. And as of this month, we will be able to you can launch any Bitnami application from the Azure Government Cloud as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ian, and he will take it away.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much. So excited to talk about Mattermost Team Edition, which is an open source private cloud Slack alternative. And today we're going to start off with a demo that launches Mattermost into Azure using Bitnami. So all those compliance benefits that were mentioned before, we're going to show all those. And the important thing here is this is a do-it-yourself demo. And what a do-it-yourself demo means is we're going to launch it live off of bitnami.com/stack/Mattermost. So if you want to follow along, if you're watching a recorded version of this demo, you can do everything here yourself. So we're going to start with bitnami.com/stack/Mattermost. So I'm going to open up this browser here. Now you can launch this demo in many different, all the major cloud platforms. There's also, Bitnami is also providing VMs as well as a Linux installer. If you go to our website, there's lots of like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, like every major orchestration or deployment platform has solutions. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to Microsoft Azure, and I'm going to go here. We can set up a new virtual machine. You can set up with your own credentials to your Azure account. You can deploy it straight into your cloud account. I'm going to do something quick and just demo in the browser, so you can do this as well if you want to try this from where you are. I'm going to click the Demo in Browser button. It's going to give me a 1-hour demo, which is perfect for this webinar. And everything here we're doing here is just, it's very straightforward. It's very honest. You can do exactly the same with just a web browser. So Microsoft Azure, you can see it's 25% created. We're going to go back to the presentation for a little bit, and then we'll be coming back to this demo instance and showing you around. So that's a demo. That's how easy it is to get started, launching Mattermost directly into Azure using Bitnami. Let's talk about like what we're showing here and what is the purpose of Mattermost. The purpose of Mattermost is to become the primary way people communicate with enterprises and applications. And that what we're all about is letting enterprises have control of their communications, letting IT be in charge again. And the reason why this is so important is because so many enterprises come to us as an open source project and they're saying, like, you are the beginning of something that's really amazing. You're the beginning of enterprise grade communication. And what enterprises tell us is, like, here's the problem. Messaging products are really painful for us to use. Well, what does that mean? You've got a large organization that's got many, many departments: engineering, HR, finance, sales. And the thing that connects them all is email. But email from the 1990s, it's like 20 years old, it's all broken, and what every enterprise has these days is messaging. And it's not the way that you would plan out how you can do communication with an organization. You've got Skype, you've got Link, you've got Yammer, you have Slack, you have HipChat, you have IRC and Jabber, and it's just a mess. And I think, if you're working at any enterprise, you could just be nodding your head right now, because you can think of when there's an emergency, when there's something important, like how many different ways, people are messaging and communicating in real time, and it's all over the place. And it's hugely painful because you've got these siloed communications. You can have dozens, even hundreds of these messaging products that aren't under IT control, that, you can reach a small group of users, but you can't reach everybody. And it's more painful when it comes to auditing and compliance, because let's say you have an HR investigation or a subpoena that you have to manage. How are you as the IT? How are you as enterprise IT able to vouch for the fact that, yes, here's all my communications from this employee? You can't, because there's too many systems to monitor. You have no idea where the communication's happening. You have no idea where confidential information is going. And that's a real danger and pain of siloed communications. But guess what? These third-party apps are monitoring your communications. Those third-party apps know more about how your users are communicating than you know. And that's just a scary thought to begin with. And it just goes along this whole theme of inadequate security. You can't secure all these different applications. You don't know what's running behind them. You don't know where the data is going. And they won't tell you, because they're really not built for enterprise. They don't want to answer those questions for you, because they're really not built for your use case. And when we talk about lack of configurability, this goes hand in hand. They're really not designed for enterprise, and they really can't be configured for what you need, for compliance, for role-based permissions, for all the access controls that an enterprise really has to use. They can't integrate with backend systems. The APIs are all different. They're inconsistent. They're very limited. Now, these are SaaS-based services, so there's a lot of throttling, and there's a lot of things you can't control, and things are really locked down. And even if you get one of these systems to kind of work and kind of integrate, even if you invest in one, it can't scale. It can't go to thousands and tens of thousands of users, which is absolutely essential for a large organization. And you've got outages for multi-tenancy. There's lots of different people sharing the infrastructure. You don't know what's going on, and things can sort of pop out at any time. And when things do go wrong, you have no idea how disaster recovery is happening. You don't know where things are backed up. And on both fronts, you don't know how you're going to recover your data if you lose it, but you also don't know where your confidential data is being deployed. Like, what countries is it being deployed on? Like, what are the laws around data security and privacy in those countries? You just don't know. For multinationals, again, English only is a big deal. We're being limited to just one language for a lot of these applications doesn't scale internationally. And finally, no custom branding. Now, this seems like a weird thing to talk about, but it's so important. What your enterprise experience is going to these little messaging products is the brand of the vendor. And it's really symbolic of the fact, like, this isn't built for you. This is built as a SaaS service, as a messaging product for teams and individuals. It's not your brand. It's not owned by IT. So the solution is really modern, enterprise-grade messaging under IT control. That's what Mattermost was built for from the ground up, and it's built for a single instance deployment that brings together all your different organizations. Hundreds of different teams can use Mattermost as a central communication system. And we built it the right way. This is enterprise-wide communication. It goes across everyone in the organization. It has data sovereignty. You have all your data in MySQL or Postgres, very scalable, familiar infrastructure that resides under your control. It's secured behind your firewall. So all the investments you made in IT policy and compliance, because Mattermost goes into your data center, it goes into your cloud platform, all that is still decided by you. Highly configurable and compliant. It just goes in hand to hand with being enterprise grade. Integration to existing systems. Mattermost has more ways to integrate than any product in the market. It is your server. You have access to complete APIs, RESTful APIs in the server. There's drivers in JavaScript, Golang, and many community drivers. We've got webhooks that are actually Slack compatible. You can actually take a Mattermost URL, put it into a Slack integration that use webhooks, and they'll just work. And we've got slash commands. We have bots, like the whole. We have a very extensive set of capabilities for integrating to your existing systems. It's highly scalable. You can run multiple clusters with high availability, read replicas, and get to tens of thousands of users. And all that is about being able to deploy single tenant. So it's your configuration. It's all you. You don't have to be on anyone else's schedule, have anyone else's dependencies. It's all under your full control. And you have transparent disaster recovery. When you decide to back up, you know exactly where those backups are going. MySQL, Postgres, really simple, straightforward backups that will work with the rest of your infrastructure. And we support 11 languages, all the major languages in Europe and Asia: Japanese, Korean, Chinese, both simplified and traditional. And the final thing, internal branding. This is Mattermost, but like our largest enterprise customers, they've all customized it. It's all under their brand, all under the look and feel, and it's really coherent with the rest of the internal infrastructure. That's what it means to be enterprise grade. And there's no other product on the market that's really answering that call. So let's show you what that. So let's keep diving into that experience. What does that look like? And this is again, this is a do-it-yourself demo. First thing I'm doing is I'm going to copy the credentials. And before I go to the application, I'm just going to mention two things. So Bitnami takes care of all the automation and setup. And there's just two last things you have to configure that are specific to your cloud platform. One is going to be SSL, and the other is going to be your SMTP server. So those are going to be specific to your cloud deployment. Otherwise, everything is set up. So I'm going to go to the application, click this button. It's going to say your connection might not be private. That's okay, because that just gives me the HTTPS warning. I'll set that up later. And then it's just letting you, hey, email notifications have not been configured. Again, that's the SMTP. We're going to enter our credentials, user, and then the password, which Bitnami provided. I'm going to sign in. And this is how fast and easy it is. We're going to end up in this tutorial. So when your end user joins Mattermost for the first time, there's in-app training about how everything needs to be set up. So welcome to Mattermost, very simple message. It tells you how you can use the mobile apps. So getting started right away. We have mobile apps for iOS and Android, as well as Windows, Linux, and Mac. Now all the source code is available, so you can go and customize these however you like. And you're all set. That's all you really need to know about Mattermost, how to use the mobile apps and what it's for. You're ready to invite teammates. There's an email address here that you can configure to be your own internal IT help desk. And that's really important because you've got this confidential information. You have all your customer requirements, and you really don't want people clicking on a link to go to some third party and ask questions. You really want to be able to have that all handled in-house. So that's done. So the tutorial's complete. Now I'm into Mattermost, and I can start using it right away. There's some tips that continue the training experience. So how to send messages, how to send attachments. Over here, it'll tell you about channels and how to do group discussions. So group discussions that are public are called channels. Group discussions that are private are called private groups. And then one-to-one messaging are called direct messages. And we just walk the end users through all that training. And of course, you can skip these tutorials. Tell you too quickly about two channels that everyone's a member of. One's called Town Square. That's going to be communication for everybody. That's where you have your announcements. And there's off-topic. Off-topic's like, hey, this is fun. I want to share like a cat video, but I don't want to sort of interrupt the more work-related discussions. So that's available. Next, we have the ability to create and join channels. I'm just giving a little tutorial on how all that works. Last thing to teach you is, how to use the main menu. So the main menu for most users is, hey, how do I invite people to this team? How do I access my own account settings? How do I change the theme color? All those pieces. And then for the team administrator, it will have access to team settings, and for the system console, and then for system administrator, it will have access to the system console. And that's a basic walkthrough of what end user is going to have when working through the system. All right, so for account settings, for this demo, what we're going to do here is we're going to import a Slack team. So we're going to go to team settings. We're going to go import, and we've got instructions on how to import a Slack team. This is about going straight into a Slack user interface, exporting a file, and then selecting that file here. So we're going to select the little file for this demo, click OK, and we're going to start the import process. And what you're going to see is we're importing the Slack team. In the background, there's going to be lots of user accounts created. There's about, I think, like 20 users in this demo account. There's about 19,000 messages and about 30 Slack channels. So all this is being imported. And while that import is taking place, let's go back to talk about the other features of Mattermost. So that demo was about Mattermost basics, the tutorial, and importing a Slack team. Now we want to talk about, well, what exactly is that software we saw? What you're seeing is Mattermost Team Edition. This is an award-winning open source Slack alternative. It's under MIT license. There's over 500 contributors. It's in 11 languages. It has over 10,000 stars on GitHub and a really vibrant community. And you can just, you can search the web. You can find all sorts of people talking about it. We're in Wired Magazine, Softpedia, Reddit, eWeek, Product Hunt. It's a really popular solution for people who want to have, control of their communications and using open source software to do that. It's very high quality. We've been recognized again and again. InfoWorld, Black Duck, OpenSource.com are really pointing out like Mattermost is the leader in this space. And what we're showing here is the open source version, and I also want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the enterprise editions and all the editions. So all Mattermost is modern communication behind your firewall, and we fulfill that promise in a number of ways. So the open source team edition, this is really for a virtual office. So it's best for teams up to 100 users. Now you can add more, there's no limits there, but it's best for up to 100 users. It's one-to-one group messaging. It's got those native apps for mobile, web, and PC. It offers archiving, unlimited search, and archiving is anything that's deleted or edited. All that information remains in your database, so it's very compliant. You have complete histories. You've got unlimited integrations, unlimited ways to integrate. This is your software. There are no throttles on it. It's in 11 languages, and it's MIT licensed. So, really easy. You hit that button, it goes in your data center. You don't have to worry about licensing or any sort of administrative things. MIT license, that simple. Now let's talk about once you're starting to grow your deployments, the Team Edition has an upgrade to the Enterprise Edition. This is a virtual campus. So when you're up to hundreds or thousands of users, you start needing more enterprise features, right? Like a campus, a collection of offices needs more than one single office. So first is Active Directory and LDAP SSO and synchronization. So the ability to sort of provision people in your Active Directory server, they'll be able to have access to Mattermost. Deprovision them from Active Directory, they get deactivated at Mattermost. That's what synchronization is about. It's about having the same credentials across all your different systems. Very, very appropriate virtual campus feature, very appropriate for the Enterprise Edition. Advanced access control, so lots of different permissions of things that you want to lock down, and you want to assign people, different roles to do different tasks. Multi-factor authentication. So this is, Mattermost is really designed to work behind your firewall, but if you want to go outside, if you want to go to DMZ, we let you do that with multi-factor authentication, or help you do that, and you can have your own EMM solutions as well, like the AirWatches, the mobile irons. Those all work with Mattermost. You've got tools for custom branding to make it look how you want without having to dig into too much of the weeds. We can make that really easy with tools for custom branding. There's commercial support. So when you're serious about deploying Mattermost at scale, you really want someone standing behind it. Commercial support and a commercial license really do help you do that. Finally, if you're really large enterprise, we have Enterprise Edition E20. So this is a virtual city. This is for tens of thousands of users. For huge deployments, we have horizontal scaling. We have performance monitoring using Grafana and Prometheus. We have high availability. So if you want to do really sophisticated active-active setups with read replicas, load balancers, we have lots of documentation on how to do that. We even have an open source Mattermost load test that will let you simulate, large load, make sure the hardware sizing is correct, take your stats of like what your users are expected to do and just run it, make sure everything works in staging, and then push to production with very high confidence. Single sign-on, Okta, ADFS, SAML. There's more here that I can list. One login, Office 365, Google, SSO, all those are available. Compliance reporting, so the ability to bring back reports. You can work with third-party compliance systems like Global Relay. You can do exports based on like users and dates. All that's very structured with compliance reporting. And the important thing here is you've got oversight as well, so that when people are pulling those reports, all that is logged and you have oversight versus going straight in the database and seeing like everything. Compliance reporting can be more locked down in the Enterprise E20. And also eligible for Premier support. This is the highest standard of support relationship we have with Mattermost. And it's essentially like having core committers of the open source project on your team to help with escalations or talking about roadmap and all these different things. It's a very close relationship for these virtual cities with these tens of thousands of users, these very large enterprise deployments. Now, just before we go back in the demo, I will walk you through quickly what it looks like to do an enterprise rollout. So, you're going to start, this is tens of thousands of users. You're going to start with a project plan, system sizing, pilot. You can simulate all the load and you get all the different stats for a very large project. We'll plan it with you for Mattermost Inc. Every deployment at that scale is different. Everyone has different requirements, globally, time zones, load, concurrency, and we plan it with you. You've got dev, staging, and production environments. You want to set those up. A lot of these SaaS services don't even have a staging and dev environment that you can use. And that's kind of crazy if you're thinking about using this for mission-critical infrastructure that's got lots of integrations that you're really going to customize. Now, all the mobile, so customizing experience is hugely important for enterprise customers. Being able to take the open source mobile apps and desktop apps and really tune them how you want. Be able to add integrations. That is all part of a very large enterprise rollout process. We have EMM integrations for mobile apps, so whether you're using AirWatch or Mobile Iron, you can use AppDome, one of our partners, to accelerate that, that process for getting things under EMM. Integrations, bots, and custom systems. This is where, especially if you have a very strong developer culture in your company, they really love all the API access, all that they can do. For some reason, all the developers love custom emojis. I mean, if you're having a 10,000 person rollout, like it's not surprising to get 1,000 custom emojis. For all the things that people want to do with the system. Scale, security, penetration testing, sort of a must-have for these large deployments, and you have transparency into Mattermost and what it does to go do that. Then it's time to set up your corporate directory and SSO synchronization. Set up your roles and permissions configuration. There's lots of planning and around that to get to work exactly how you want. And all that comes down to, well, how do you do help desk training and end user training? How do you want them to, for example, organize the channels and deployment? How do you want them to name things? Do you want them to have multiple teams? Do you want them to be in a single, large team? All that's decided. Then you get down to high availability, disaster recovery, and SRE certification, making sure that people in your IT department running your infrastructure say, okay, we have a very solid procedure, all this is approved, all this is documented, this is how we run communications under IT control. Then it's about the rollout announcement and then phased onboarding, so bring people in batches, letting people know how the system is going to work. This is all part end-to-end of a very large-scale system that is controlled by your company and not by third-party vendors. So with that, now we've talked about the IT benefits. We're going to come back to the end-user experience and talk about why users prefer Mattermost. So now we're going to go do a demonstration, and we're going to use we're going to tell a story here about a major video game studio moving from Slack to Mattermost and creating a new game. So I'm going to come back here to our Azure instance, we have imported all those different users and lots of Slack channels. And to start off the demonstration, we're going to customize our appearance a little bit. So I'm going to go to Account Settings. I'm going to go to Create our user. So the same thing that you would do if you installed this on your own system, you would take the default user account, or you might actually create a new account. But you can just set up your first name and last name. So I'm going to be Paula Potts. Username is going to be Paula. Position, I'm going to be, we're doing a video game company, I'm going to call myself an executive producer. And we're going to click a profile picture here. Now, I mentioned we're doing a video game. We're actually going to do a video game that's going to be based on this comic called Pepper and Carrot. Pepper and Carrot's an open source comic, which means that all of its imagery and IP is open source, so we can go reuse and remix it, which makes it really great for demonstration. So I'm going to use Paula Potts. I'm going to use Pepper as our profile pic. All right, so you can see in the top left corner, I'm now Paula. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to open a channel. And you see there's about 30 channels that have been, there's been a lot of channels that have been imported from that Slack team. I'm going to go into this one called Asset Room. And what Asset Room does is this is where we discuss lots of different assets that we had used in creating our video games. You can see at the top here, we've got lots of links to different 3D checklist, art box where we keep our assets, the asset list, all the things that we need. So we're just kind of like telling the story of like, hey, I'm at a video game company, I'm going to the Asset Room, we just moved from Mattermost to Slack, and we're going to start using it for our day-to-day work. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to post a message. Now this message is a little bit different than you'll see in Slack because we've got a bit of formatting on it. I'm posting a message to actually cue something for discussion later on. So I've got a heading and I've got a number, which is like, hey, I'll just show you how to do this. We have a heading using Markdown. We have a bunch of like hash signs, and we're going to say, okay, here's the heading, here's the topic I want to cue for discussion. Should we create a Pepper and Comic video game based on the comic book? Why? Because Pepper and Carrot's a fun comic for all ages. It's a wonderful audience, high quality art and IP that's open source. You can see I've got bullet points here, and I've got some heading in formatting here. I save it, and that's just available here in the messaging experience. So I can do all that sort of IRC or Slack style messaging on top, and if I want to, I can add in that formatting just because we do support Markdown. Now, other people can say, okay, before we get to that meeting topic, maybe you just want to add a comment on this. So I'm going to simulate that here. Let's say someone wanted to reply and say something about this. We'll just make it really simple. We'll just add the image. So someone's like, oh, okay, people don't really know what Pepper and Carrot is. Let me add a URL to a JPEG, and we've got the JPEG preview here. So we can say that, hey, we can talk about this agenda topic before it even gets there through threaded messaging. So this is thread messaging. We've had it for over a year, almost 2 years. So it was added in 2015, 2017. So 2 years we've had threaded messaging. Slack has its own version. It's a little different. We think ours is a little better, and we'll kind of explain why. All right, so there we've talked about Pepper and Carrot. We've got one agenda topic. I'm now going to cue a second agenda topic. I'm going to say like, okay, wait a minute. We just moved from Slack to Mattermost. And I want to say, well, why don't we upgrade the imported Slack channels to Mattermost channels? So what does that mean? What does it mean to upgrade Slack channels to Mattermost channels? Well, Mattermost channels do more. Now, remember, we're an open source community, which means that end users look at the system and they're like, you know what, you can improve that. You can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. And they actually build it with us. 500 people, eyes on it, improving it. And it's been a really wonderful experience. So I'm going to take a little screenshot here. I'm going to show you the before and the after. So this is the before, right? This is what a Slack channel header looks like. You've got the channel name in lowercase letters with no spaces, in English only, lowercase letters with no spaces. And you've got a header that has to have links in it that just take up a bunch of space. And the only way we can get there is to show. The only way we can see everything is to click on it, and you see all the different links that we want to include. It's kind of messy. What we're going to do is we're going to improve it. We're going to go, all right, I'm going to rename this channel. I'm going to use capital letters. and spaces. It's not that different, but like once you start doing this, once you start having sort of like normal language in your left-hand sidebar, you really can't go back. It's so much easier to see. And it's also important for international, for Chinese, for Japanese, for Korean, just to have, channel names in their own language. It's a big deal. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the channel header. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this from just simple text with links to Markdown. So you see with Markdown, I've got little brackets around my link, the text of my link, and I've got the URL in sort of round brackets after. So square brackets for the link, round brackets for the URL. I save that, and wow, so much cleaner, right? So now that's what we're looking at. We're looking at, I'm going to screenshot this as well. We're looking at just a very clean way of doing links. And you could do this, it doesn't have, and this could be links to like, a video conferencing solution. This could be links to SharePoint. This could be links to, many other backend systems that you got. And I'm going to add this as a comment to my agenda topic. I'm like, okay, well, I want to upgrade these channels. What does that look like? Here's the before. You can see, asset rooms, English only, dashes, no spaces, messy links. And here's the after. Really clean. We got our links in here, and everything's just, it's very user friendly, and it's very international friendly. I'm going to add one more thing here just to show off a little bit, because we use Markdown. I'm actually going to add a code coverage. I'm going to embed a code coverage image. It'll actually tell you real time like what the code coverage is on a backend system. So just to kind of show off a little bit all the things that Mattermost can do. Now, here's what's happened while I've been showing this stuff to you. We've got the system message that says, hey, you've updated the asset room name, and hey, you've updated, the header, and hey, you've updated the header again. So, that's good because everyone wants to be aware of the changes happening inside the channel. But it's also, this will happen in any system, but it's also gotten in the way of what I really want to talk about, which is the pepper and carrot video game. So you can see it's gotten away. We've been interrupted. But the great thing about threaded messaging is that when I click this, reply button, I still get the original content, the original topic that I was talking about. And what I want to do is I want to come back and I want to add more to this. So I was like, wait a minute, I haven't finished talking about the video game. Let me say a few things. Let me say that. Let me say a few things. Let me say that, there's been a really basic video game already developed for pepper and carrots. I'm, sort of talking about the content again. I'm going to share an animated GIF of what that looks like. So, by the way, yeah, there's another video game. So I'm basically coming back to that topic that we had before, and just continue the conversation. So I've talked about like, okay, well, there's actually been a video game. Hey, here's some more research that I've done. There's actually been a motion comic as well. So there's an Indiegogo account that had this motion comic. I'm basically adding all this material to a thought. So, it's not just like, here's a message, here's a message. Now, Mattermost totally works with that, but it's also the ability to have more thoughtful, longer conversations. Like the brand is Mattermost. Like what matters most is be able to have these continuous thoughts and these important discussions. And that's what's really built around. So you've got the ability to play video here. You can see it with the work done in the motion comic. And all that's just, all this is just available. Remember, we just started this, like we just installed this at the beginning of this demo. One more thing I'll show you is, well, how do you add files? So we're going to be able to like select, here's 4 different files. I'm going to post them in here. And this is research on that motion comic. You can see them uploading over here. I'm going to add them as a comment. So again, everything's in one thread, right? I queued something for discussion. Everything's still in one thread. And now I can sort of click on these and talk about them. So here's, Indiegogo campaign for the motion comic. Here's Nikolai, the wonderful person who was developing the motion comic. This is a screenshot from the YouTube video. What we're showing here is a PDF version of this open source comic, Pepper and Carrot. You notice it's in Japanese. So this Pepper and Carrot comic, it's all around the world. It's translated all these different languages. It's beautiful artwork, completely open source, really just wonderful. And here's another attachment. Here's a PHP file that the creator of the open source comic actually has on their website, showing like, oh, this is how they do sort of like their wiki entries. So you can see it's called wiki.php. It's in PHP. It's got syntax highlighting all that's built into Mattermost. Now remember, we just installed this. All this is running, really smooth, really easy, user-friendly, and it's all there. I'll show you a couple things here. I'll show you how to embed that PHP code inside of Mattermost with syntax highlighting. All you do is 3 ticks, and you say PHP. You end it, and you say 3 more ticks. Enter that, and there we go. We've got all the PHP code here in the center channel. All the syntax highlighting works with dozens and dozens of languages: Golang, C, C++, Python, Ruby. All that syntax highlighting is taken care of. And I'll show, and we just showed you how to do it. And you know what? In the right-hand sidebar, it's a little bit hard to read. So I'm going to click this button over here, which is Expand Sidebar. And you've got this sort of widescreen viewing experience for the sidebar. And you can use this for search results. You can use this for threaded conversations. And it's another feature that the open source community added that Slack hasn't quite caught up with yet. Hopefully do for Slack users. But this is yet another example of all the flexibility you've got with Mattermost. And our thread discussions, the reason why we like them, I think, a little bit better, I think why people like them a little better than Slack conversations is you've got all that markdown formatting. You can actually add attachments to our threads where that's not possible in Slack and other products. You've got that syntax highlighting, all sort of wonderful things available. I'll just show you a couple other, things that just, standard questions that you might have. We have the ability to, how do I, remember to follow up on something? How do I create a little reminder? So we have a flag for follow-up. So we touch that little flag next to a post, and you'll sort of be able to come back to it a little bit later. So you click those flags, and now if I go in the right-hand side, I hit that little flag icon. You can see, well, those are all the messages I flagged. I can unflag them after I get back to them. I can reply to them immediately. Really, just all these sort of nice productivity features. Another little productivity feature I can add to favorites. So I've got, the asset room. Well, that's getting my favorites. I might have lots and lots of different channels, but asset room, that's the one I want to work on right now. So that's the end user experience. You've got lots of the core features that Slack and other proprietary messaging products offers, but this is all open source, all under MIT license. Now what we're going to do is a couple last things. One is we're going to show, we have that Japanese comic book. Well, what does it look like for, let's say, the entire user interface to look Japanese? So we'll go from English to Japanese, and we'll save it. And we'll say, now look, all of our menus are in Japanese. All of our account settings and selections are in Japanese. One thing I'll also demonstrate here is I'm going to take this. Now, this is a web browser experience. Another thing we do that other products don't do is we have a completely responsive design. So not only are we available on iOS and mobile apps, iOS and Android apps, we actually have a mobile web experience that, if you're not able to install the app for whatever reason, you can still use Mattermost on these mobile devices through that mobile web experience. And everything comes over, all the translation. So this mobile app, it's in Japanese, right? And you've got all the settings, everything is in that local language. Everything's built so high quality because we have such a large community and so many eyes on it. And the last thing I'll show here, which is kind of fun, is the ability to change your theme colors and customize them. There's probably over 20 different options you can have for changing your theme colors, customizing the alerts, all the messaging, whatever sort of themes you want. You can import them. You can share your themes. And again, for people who are coming over from Slack, we're able to import your themes from Slack. So just as one example here, you can take a Slack theme. There's instructions how to do it. You can import it, and you've got the the purple and green that kind of comes default with Slack. But the big difference is it's in Japanese. If Slack is English only, and what we're doing here is really opening up this idea of workplace messaging to the whole world. So yeah, there it is. You've got an end user experience that has all the core features of proprietary SaaS messaging solutions. And you've got the entire system under your control. All the data is in your back end. And you have the ability to secure it, to configure it, and to scale it. And there's really nothing else in the market that has that sort of all these wonderful benefits for enterprise. So with that, we talked about starting with just Bitnami web page, deploying to Azure, importing a Slack team, and then using a product and configuring it, translating different languages, end to end. So happy to be able to share that with you. And big thanks to Pepper and Carrot. Pepper and Carrot is that web comic created by David Revoy. It's under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0. I hope you research it and check it out. It's a wonderful comic. It's in many different languages. And I'm so happy that we're able to show some of that work here. And I'd love to open up to questions and answers. So,
great.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ian. We do have a few questions that have been asked, so we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. The first question is, does Mattermost support something similar to MongoDB's replica sets?
I'm not familiar with MongoDB's replica sets. I would say that if using Mattermost, so Mattermost does not support MongoDB. It supports MySQL and Postgres. And for the Enterprise Edition, you can do read replicas. And that's part of the high availability mode. And you can read our documentation. You can go to docs.mattermost.com, and you can read all about how we set up high availability and those instances. That said, it's open source, so you can take the software and sort of add whatever you want. I think MongoDB would be kind of tricky, but that's where we are.
Okay. Secondly, is it possible to log all DMs in Mattermost?
Yes, all DMs are automatically logged, as well as all messaging. So if you edit a post, if you delete a post, every edited post, every deleted post, every created post, all that is stored in your MySQL or Postgres database, and you have complete access to all of the history.
Great. Is there a limit to the number of channels that can be added?
There's not I don't believe there's a limit. I don't believe there's a limit, but you can have thousands and thousands of channels. There's sort of a usability limit, and you can search through all the channels. For enterprises, for the Enterprise Edition, you can have like thousands and thousands of channels. It's pretty typical. What you're going to have to watch out for is how do you name everything.
The fourth question we have is, do you recommend using the open source version for a startup, and is there custom branding that could come with it?
I'd say the open source version, I would say for startups, it depends on your startup. This is really for modern communication behind your firewall. This is really a private cloud on-premise, really private cloud, secure deployment that's really behind a private network. And that's its real sweet spot. That way said, it's open source. You can kind of fiddle with it all that you want. The focus of the project and of the software is private cloud.
Okay. Can you configure where files are uploaded and stored?
Oh, it's a great question. Yes. So you can have local storage to store your files that are all uploaded. So similar to how messages work, once something is uploaded, it's there. We don't do deletes. We have a complete audit history of everything. So use local storage. You can use a network-attached storage device. You can use S3. And a fantastic open source called Minio has added a driver to Mattermost that lets you treat your local storage as if it was as object-based storage, like an S3. So you can just, they're winners of one of our hackathons. So just to summarize, local storage, network-attached storage, Amazon S3, or you can use a Minio driver to do object-style storage using sort of a regular file system. So those are the storage options.
Great. And since we have a couple minutes left, we have 3 more questions. First being, Slack has compatible third-party integrations. Are those also available in Mattermost?
So Mattermost APIs, Mattermost webhooks are compatible with Slack, and our open source community comes in, and when they don't work, when they're not compatible, they give us a pull request to make them compatible. So it's really thanks to that open source community and that enthusiasm to make them work that way. And how that works is if you build an open, and this is pretty common now, you see a lot of open source integrations are Slack and Mattermost because the webhook integrations are compatible. And we have this philosophy, Slack compatible, not Slack limited, which means the Mattermost webhooks, you can use Slack and it'll render similar to Slack, but you can also use a lot of Mattermost specific features. You can use Markdown, you can embed images, you can create tables, you can create formatting, you can add animated GIFs. So the concept is Slack compatible, not Slack limited. you can take a Mattermost webhook URL and then and go to a Slack webhook and just replace it, and it'll just be compatible. And then on top of that, we've got SaaS integrations through Zapier. Zapier, which is also available in Slack. Zapier connects to 700 different integrations. So you've got like Trello and Jira and GitHub. All those are available for SaaS deployments. So that's the place you would start. The difference is Slack has a lot of integrations that are built custom for Slack, and they're SaaS-based, and they're sort of like locked into they're not even using the webhooks. They're just talking straight to the Slack APIs. Those don't connect with Mattermost. But where Mattermost sort of is got its advantage is in having the complete server API open. So you can go in and whatever Mattermost is doing, like our web client, our mobile client, our desktop clients, all the interactions we have are going through that API. So you have the power to do those kind of integrations. So to summarize, yes, we're Slack compatible on webhooks. We aren't like the ones that are like hard coded to Slack. We don't those don't connect to us. But what you have instead is the access to the Mattermost APIs and to drivers in Golang and JavaScript and other languages, where you can build things to your custom backends. And sorry, one last thing: dozens and dozens of open source integrations. You go to mattermost.com and look under features, and you'll see like a list of integrations that you can just like take and set up.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question. How do you search for a file attachment by file attachment name?
Great question. How do you search for a file attachment or file attachment name? So that's on a roadmap. It's not in the product yet. So typically people are we find it pretty rare that people are searching by file attachment names. Usually the conversation that they're having. So that's something that's on a roadmap.
Okay. And I think this might have been referring to one of the last questions, but what web stack is used for the API between the Mattermost server and the Mattermost mobile apps?
Okay, great. Quick question. So between the Mattermost server and the Mattermost mobile apps, there's a couple things to talk about. We have first generation and second generation mobile apps. The first generation apps use a JavaScript driver that it's open source, and that's how it interacts with the APIs. So you can actually take a look at that. You can look at that driver, and you can actually like reproduce our mobile apps. You could, and this is what some of the companies do is they'll take the Mattermost mobile apps that are largely using that driver, and they can actually embed them in other apps or other applications. So that's our first gen, using that JavaScript driver. And then our second generation, so that's the first generation use a web view. The second generation are full native, and they use React Native to build it all. Those are very custom built, and but they still use the same. And you can basically go in that code base, and you can see how they're separating everything out. But everything goes to that RESTful API on the server. You've got a driver and you have like JavaScript drivers for the mobile apps. The first generation just uses the first generation one's out, and the second generation you can actually join it. You can actually go to the open source project. It's called Mattermost-Mobile, and you can actually take a look at the code base and see everything that's being developed there. Sorry, it's a little bit long-winded, but the answer is there's two mobile apps. One uses a JavaScript driver that's pretty baked, and then the second one you can actually take a look at the source code and see how that's being developed. It's full native using React Native.
Okay, great. So I think we are out of time, but I would like to thank everyone who joined us for the webinar and who had registered today. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Bitnami at community.bitnami.com. Also, we have recorded this webinar, and we will be sending it out to all of our registrants over the next couple days. So thank you, and we hope to see you again.